Yo, what's up? My name is Lexli, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to get Valhallan in Brawlhalla. If this video ends up helping you, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as I'm going to be doing a ton of guides to help you improve, and if you want any personal coaching from me, check out the link down below. Okay, so yeah, before we start, I just want to make something clear, and that you don't need some high-end PC, or you don't need some high refresh rate monitor or any of that just to get Valhallan. Valhallan itself can be done on literally any platform, probably on a Samsung smart fridge. It's not as if it's going pro where it's you need to have, a 360 or 240 hertz monitor, right? So anyone can do it, doesn't really matter. I've seen that myth before. I've seen people talk about they can't rank up because they're not on a PC. Yeah, many people have done it before, so you can too. Okay, so the first point I want to make is motivation is pretty much the biggest thing. So if you're 2000 and you're going from 2000 and trying to get Valhallan, you're not gonna have a fun time because that's a lot of elo you have to gain, right? So you're gonna go from 2000 to 2100. You're gonna fall back down to 2000. You know what I mean? You're gonna get stuck in between that. You're gonna get hard stuck there. Then you're gonna get 2200, then 2300, 2400, 2500. Then you're finally Valhallan. That's a lot, right? So a big thing is keeping motivation, and I think when you make your whole goal just getting Valhalla instantly, it's gonna cause a lot of issues. So what you should do instead is just kind of have these smaller goals as you work your way to Valhalla. So for example, if you're 2000, work on getting 2050, or if you're 2100, go for 2200. Just make smaller goals, whatever you think you can achieve, and just play to get new peaks, and then eventually you're going to be 2450, and then you're going to get near 2500, and that's when you start getting near Valhalla. And I think for the most part end of season is probably 2512, I want to say, is when you're hitting Valhalla. And so yeah, it's going to take a while compared to where you start, so you just need to have motivation for it, because you shouldn't try to get Valhalla if you're 2000. Instead, you should try to get 2100, because there's a lot you need to learn to get 2100 compared to the tons of amount of stuff you need to learn to get to 2500. So you should first learn how to get 2100, then how to get 2200, and then move on to the higher ranks and stuff like that. That way you kind of keep motivated, because when you're playing in low 2k or 2100, right, you're gonna start noticing that it's wow, there's no way I'm getting 600 elo, especially if you're gonna queue a 2200, and then you're just gonna lose to them, and you're wow, how I can't even beat that guy. There's no way. And so you just need to have motivation. And so the biggest thing is to keep grinding for a smaller rank. Don't go straight up trying to get the highest rank. Just kind of make sure your goals are oriented good, and then just make small goals, and then definitely keep on sort of the mental. It's do you really want to hit this rank, right? Because if you don't want to hit this rank, you're not going to be motivated to constantly play, right? So just make sure you're motivated to get this rank, and make sure you make small goals before you just go straight into trying to get Valhalla. Okay, so for the second thing is just matchup knowledge. So if I'm 2000 trying to get to Valhalla, right? The first thing is 2000 to 2100, and then 2100 to 2200. What you really need to know in order to rank up really fast is understanding the sort of matchups you're going to be faced against. Because a lot of the times when you're diamond, you have a grasp on fundamentals, so you're probably really good at them. In fact, I've seen 2000 be able to move around really fast and stuff like this, right? They may not have an understanding of movement itself and how to use it effectively, but they know how to input stuff, right? They understand kind of what it does. They know all their true combos, right? They know how to punch. They know all the stuff, but they don't know matchups, right? So they don't know, for example, what to do when their opponent's just running from them over here, sitting on the side of the stage, or they don't know what to do when their opponent's just mindlessly aggressing them, right? When they're on full autopilot, just constantly going for attacks, right? Following them around, and just kind of constantly being in their space. Or maybe they don't know a certain weapon matchup, like gauntlets, for example, right? Something, when I was lower, I think 2300, whenever I fought gauntlets, I really didn't know what to do against sidelight, which to me sounds kind of crazy now. When I think about gauntlets versus lance, I'm I used to not know what to do against this move. I would fight this move, and I'm just what do I do? I would literally sit right here, and I'd just be waiting, and I'm what do I do here? And it's and then now it's just jump stare. That's the freest punish in the world. But or maybe if I'm in a situation where in the air, I can do a falling air or something, right? But stuff like this, I used to not know, and I just didn't even know what to do against it, and I would just constantly just have to wait, and then I'll eventually get hit by a sidelight, and I would just lose the game because of that. And that's just an example of me not having a matchup knowledge. That's why I was 2300. So making sure you understand every matchup, and whenever you lose a game, right, and especially if you lose a game to a certain weapon or anything, figure out why that is, and figure out the weapon matchup, right? Every weapon's going to be different, because if you're fighting guitars, for example, and compared to spear, spear is a long range weapon, right? Where it has like these longer poke tools. It has like an anti-air that's really good and leads to its true combos. So like a lot of people are looking for these D lights, and a lot of people are looking to poke you with in light, right? And so sometimes they're going to be more kind of space, kind of waiting for you to approach them so they can poke you. While like someone who's playing, like a Zuri, for example, a lot of the times they play guitars and they just run at you with sidelight over and over again, right? And so you need to know, like, if I'm fighting a Zuri, I can easily, punish them for being aggressive if they're going to play aggressive. And if they're playing Spear, right, I need to know how to, like, bait out an inlight from them to get a punish or something like that. Or bait out a poke option or, do whatever, like empty hop to get a D light bait out, something like that. And understanding matchup knowledge is really important there. And the best way I can go about it is kind of make your own flowchart. Like, just play the game, figure out what works against different players, and then just kind of like remember that or like write it down and just have a flowchart. So then whenever you find a certain playstyle, you're like, oh, I fought this before, I know what to do. And then when a new playstyle comes up, that's when you could be like, okay, this is where I get to like test stuff out and then constantly build a flowchart. Because people who have an idea of what to do, right, they're obviously going to do a lot better. And that's why a lot of times you see people like struggle against like certain elo players or like certain specific players is because they haven't made like a strategy against them. So like having matchup knowledge, understanding like a certain game plan, right? And also understanding like your weapons game plan too. So like, if I'm playing Lance, for example, a lot of the times my game plan is built on like maybe in-light pokes, right? This grounded kit, staying grounded, especially like I don't want to really go off stage too much unless I'm going for like a kill confirm with like a sidelight there. And so I'm mostly going to be on stage. I'm going to be looking for these poke options and like, sideline to dare, right? And I'm going to be doing that compared to like, a side player who's going to be looking for maybe like a bunch of off-stage gimps and stuff like that, right? Or a guitarist player who's looking to get up into my face and be stacked to me so they can, go for in lights or side lights or whatever, right? So having a game plan for your weapon, understanding matchup knowledge compared to different weapons, super important, right? And just build up a flow chart is really important. Like basically every single 2400 player has a flow chart. They might not even know it, but they definitely do, right? And a lot of it is just like making a flow chart, refining it, and then constantly like practicing it, getting better at it, adding more, right? And that's going to be probably the biggest thing that's going to get you like a ton of elo is, you're going to be like, oh, I know this player, right? I'm going to be able to beat him now because I already know like this specific player. He's like overly aggressive. They usually dodge in or dodge up and in or something like that. So yeah, matchup knowledge really important. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one, and that's going to be having a consistent schedule. So what I mean by consistent schedule is just technically play every day, right? And I don't mean play for like 5 hours or something. Like you don't need 8 hours a day or anything like that. Just like log in, just go into training, like practice for 15 minutes, maybe play experimental game, then go into rank for like 3 to 5 games, right? And then maybe VOD review the games afterwards. And that is consistent. If you do that every single day, right? That's something easy, maybe like an hour or two of your day just to do that. And the more, times you do it, the better you're going to get. Because if you go for like a week without playing Brawl, you're going to be a lot more washed compared to what you were like the day you stopped playing. Because right, consistency is really important, right? You don't want to like one day log in and then not be able to hit your true combos true, and then you go into ranked and then you're just missing your true combos, or like your movement's off, or like your spacing's off, or like you don't know a certain matchup anymore, or like you're VOD reviewing, you're learning something, and then you go back to your old habit because you spend a week without practicing. So having a consistent schedule is really important. Just make sure you play every day. At least like 5 games a day is usually what I tell myself is like just log in, play 5 games, something like that. Sometimes I do a spar, sometimes I do ranked. Sometimes it could be a tournament day, so I just played the tournament, right? So just having a consistent schedule is really important. Just make sure you play every single day, right? And right overall, you're gonna improve a lot. You're gonna be more consistent. You're not gonna be like missing stuff, like especially if you're going training room, practicing your true combos, practicing your movement, like making sure everything's refined, right? And also you're gonna get a lot more games in because let's say I play one day and I play like 40 games in one day, right? Those 40 games, well, yeah, that's a lot. Let's say afterwards, right? I just don't play the game for like a month. That is not at all consistent. And if I were to play like 5 games every single day instead of those 40 games, I would have way over 40 by the end of the month. So it's kind of important to like actually make sure you're sitting on a schedule that's like simple, easy to follow. Like you shouldn't be playing 40 games a day. That's just not useful at all. Like you can really only focus for a few games before you just get like completely on autopilot. So playing like 5 games, just making sure to focus, and then like VOD reviewing afterwards, right, is pretty much all you need. Like you shouldn't be playing more than 5. Like there's no way you're playing like 10 games. You're fully focused and you're constantly improving. Like eventually you're gonna get on autopilot. So make sure you have a consistent schedule, right, and just constantly play every single day 5 games. Warm up before, play the 5 games, VOD review after. Okay, so this kind of goes to consistency, but it's talking about mental. And if you don't know anything about mental, right, I've already talked about mental, go check that one out. But with mental specifically, you need to just make sure whenever you're playing games, you're not trying to like play for wins or for elo or whatever it is, right? Which I know it's kind of like weird to say, this is a video about getting Valhalla, and like obviously I should be playing for elo, but at the end of the day, like if you're going to a game, you're wanting consistent practice, you want to improve, you should go in with a different mindset of actually improving compared to trying to just win the game, right? Like if, for example, if I'm playing a game and let's just say like, my punishing is off. Like for some reason I'm like going for sidelights in like a really bad angle or something like that. Like I'm sidelighting right here in front of my opponent, or like I'm overly aggressive or something like that. And I'm like never getting punched off my opponents, or maybe I'm like too far away from my opponents, like I'm not spacing well enough, so like whenever they miss a move, I just can't punish them, right? Or something like that, just like a simple mistake. If you know that mistake's happening and you go into a game and you're still making that mistake but you win the game, well, you're not improving on it. Like you didn't even think about the mistake, you just won the game. And then if you lose the game and you're not thinking about the mistake and then you start tilting, that's not going to help you either. So instead you should go into a game and be like, okay, I'm not really caring about winning or losing. I just want to make sure my spacing's good, right? So you're gonna work on your spacing, get right for your punishes, make sure your weapons spacing's correctly, right? Like make sure you're not missing a side light. Like make sure you're not missing side light here when they miss like an in light. Make sure you're like, oh, he missed an in light. I'm gonna half dash in and then do a move, right? That's like another thing. Is like some people, like I've seen axe players, for example, where they play axe and they have like a free side light punish, and what they do is they just dash in and side light compared to like just side lighting normally, right? Because like you just sidelight right here, right? But instead they like dash in sidelight, and it's just like, what? Why did you dash there? And it's so easy to fix something like that, but because they're on autopilot or because they're tilting or anything, they don't really think about the habit, and they just kind of like, I want to win the game, right? Oh no, I missed a move, and then they get punished for it. So making sure you're actually focusing on improving is really important, and that also goes from VOD reviewing too. You shouldn't be going to a VOD and being like, oh, this weapon's boosted, that's why I lost, or any of that. No, you should be going in trying to learn the matchup, right? Go for the flowchart, like make your flowchart better. Understand why you lost. Figure out mistakes so you can improve on them. And then, consistent playing, making sure you go into training room, practicing mistakes, right? Like if your movement's off, like make sure your movement's good. If your spacing's off, you can even like, kind of like learn the spacing against different like bots, right? Like you can turn it into like a chosen bot and like get used to like how the weapon like moves around, right? I have them to reset, but like a sidelight here, and like, oh, falling there, I can avoid that. Okay, I need to be here. Oh, there, sidelight. Like just understanding the matchup there and stuff like that is really important, because obviously you want good spacing, or you want like good punishing, or you want to understand a certain weapon, right? Learn it. Like don't just complain about it. Learn or like improve. So yeah, that's a really big one. I feel like a lot of people just kind of don't even think about that with just like the mental. They just kind of like play ranked. They lose and they're like, oh, I need to keep playing, or like they win and they're like, yep, that's it. I'm done. I won a lot. And like just going back to like the situation where I was talking about like this dash sidelight thing, that's also really important, because like a lot of you play the game and you're thinking like, oh, I have like really good fundamentals, right? Like my spacing's good, my punishing's good, and all this, but like sometimes you get into like a pressure situation. Like let's say, it's you're both like last stock red, and in the situation you just completely throw everything out the window and you're like, I need to win this game, and then you like miss a Sair, and then you're just not even thinking about like punishing, and like your opponent misses right in front of you. Like let's just say, I don't know, some to chosen again, right? Like your opponent misses right in front of you, and like that D light, for example, right? And I don't really think about it. That light I don't think about. I'm just kind of like sitting here trying to run, hopping around, right? Not really knowing what to do, and I just don't even think about trying to space or any of that. And like I finally get the Sair off, maybe, or maybe I don't. Maybe I don't, and I just get like punished heavily, right? I'm fighting unarmed, and I just keep running in, and then I keep getting hit, stuff like this. When you play kind of like bad like this, it's because you're like panicking. You're not even thinking about like your fundamentals or anything like that. You just kind of throw them out the window just because you're like panicking here. So that's really important. Just making sure you understand that like in every situation you need to like kind of like stay kind of in a flow, right? You want to play slow. You want to make sure your offense are always right. Like you want to make sure you have really good micro spacing or like really good decisions, right? You don't want to sit here and be like throwing Lance Stare out, right? Just all the time at the last stock. You should be kind of thinking like, okay, maybe I'm looking at my opponent and I notice he's like empty hopping. So what I want to do is I want to run in and then like go for like a lance recovery, right? So like run in for recovery when they're empty hopping, because they're going to empty hop like this, and I'm going to do this and then punish them for recovery. Like I do that a lot against people who like empty hop, or like I know my opponent's going to miss, like when they miss an attack, what they do is like jump afterwards. So I wait for them to miss and I just go for a lance tear to punish their jump.
something like that. Just understand like you can slow yourself down for a kill option. You don't need to like rush a kill option, right? You shouldn't be, playing hammer for example and just rushing with D-Light. That's like the worst thing you can do on hammer, right? You should need to wait for a D-Light to actually be available for you. You don't want to just start panicking, because when you do that, you leave yourself open for punishes, and then you just lose the game, even though you're like 2 stocks up, right? Just because you weren't thinking, you start panicking, and then you're too worried about winning that your micro spacing or whatever is off, or like your punishing's off or whatever. You just throw this skill out the window and you lose the game because of it, because you're playing at a worse level. And also going off of like stuff like when they're empty hopping, or like when they're jumping for attack, that's also something important that you need to be doing. That's analyzing and like sort of adapting to what your opponent's doing, right? Learning habits, for example. Like if I find my opponent and let's say something they always do, like against me for some reason, is like they'll always dodge in against Lance if they're like off stage. Like if I hit them like right here, they'll do like a random dodge. But like if I hit them where they're, let me change the spacing a bit, right? Where like let's say they're over about like here, right? Here works too. I hit them, they're on like the edge of the stage, they will like always dodge in consistently. This is something like 2300s, 2400s. Hell, even I probably done it sometimes, right? Where it's just like it's a habit you kind of think about, because you're like, you're getting sent off stage, so you don't even think about it. You dodge the stage. And that kind of goes with the panicking situation, right? We were talking about. It's like you don't think, you just kind of do, and then you get punished for it. Because something like this is really easy to punish on Lance, right? And this goes for like other weapons too. Like cannon is a really good example. Like cannon, if you get hit by any like cannon string for a dodge read, like you're basically screwed, right? And like something like this obviously goes a long way. Or even something as simple as like, I know you like to spot dodge after missing, right? Like greatsword players do this a lot, right? Where you fight a greatsword player, and what they do is they like don't mix up on greatsword. They just kind of do a side light, they spot dodge. So all I do is I wait for the side light miss, and I wait for the spot dodge, and then I get all of this confirmed. Or sorry, he has this dodge on. Let me turn off his dodge, because he wouldn't have a dodge, right? He'll do like side light, he'll spot dodge, and then I'll just hit all of this true, right? Because one frame, it hits true, and then you just get a free 3-hit combo because your opponent's just sitting there doing side light and spot dodging, right? And if you can find habits like that, it's really important, especially just any sort of adapting. Like, for example, something I do a lot on Ulgrim is, because Ulgrim struggles with kills, a big thing I like to try to read is how my opponent likes to recover the stage. Like, do they like to kind of sit here and like go up high, or do they like to kind of come in low? Because if I'm playing Ulgrim and I know exactly what they're going to do, a quick in-sig or like a quick side-sig is really important, right? Because I can just end the game right there. And especially on like certain maps too. Like, in-sig is really good on certain maps because a lot of people want to land on the platform. And if I know they're going to land on a platform, just a quick in-sig, right? And they're getting punished for that. And that's also like really safe for me too. Like an in-sig, if they land on the platform, even if I miss this, it's like really hard for them to punish. So going for an option like that is really important if I have that read. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is just playing more ranked. Obviously, that's probably the most obvious one, but like I said, playing those 5 games are really important. Just make sure you're playing every single day and just play ranked, right? Like even if you log in, I wouldn't recommend just like log in and doing the same spar over and over again, because what happens when you spar like a very similar player every single day is you're gonna get very used to them. Like I just play against like the same person, and if I spar against them a lot, what's gonna happen is I'm gonna get so used to their habits, they're gonna get so used to my habits that our games are just gonna look like an absolute mess. So I really like playing ranked. I know like at higher elo, right? Like once you get to like 2500, it's gonna be a lot harder to want to play ranked, because a lot of times you're going to be queuing and you're going to get like these lower elo players, or maybe you'll get like sometimes a high elo player, and then you finally get to play a game. But a lot of times you queue the lower elo players and it's just like, well, I'm not improving a lot. But right, that isn't for them. This is for like the lower elo players. So if you're like 2200, right, that doesn't count to you. You're not a high elo player. You're 2200. There's plenty of 2200s who will play ranked every single day, and then you'll eventually queue a 2300 and some 2100s, right? It's very more open there. There's not a lot. Like I'm not saying there's like 1,000 2200s, but there's at least a good chunk of 2200s. Like if you queue in your 2200, you're probably gonna get a queue in like 15 seconds, right? And you're gonna queue like another 2200. So yeah, once it gets like 2400, that's when the queue starts getting a little bit dead. But even then, there's still a ton of 2400s. Like you're gonna find, like I can think of like if I were to queue in 2400, I'd probably queue like Access, or like some Perseus member, or like a Stay Hydrated Gamers member, like something like that. And you would constantly queue them. And then maybe like 2700, 2600, that's when you stop queuing good players like all the time. Like you're eventually going to get a good queue, but then it's just going to be like no one's on. And so, right, kind of feels pointless there. But guess what? When you're 2700, you're already Valhalla. So play more ranked. I'm telling you, ranked is going to be very important, because you want to play ranked, because the more you play ranked, right, the more players you're going to be fighting, the more you get to that flow chart. It kind of just ties everything together. And also rank just puts you in a situation where you're always fighting a different type of playstyle. So you get to experiment a lot more compared to just fighting the same, aggressive Azuri 2200 you've been sparring for the past 3 months, right? So yeah, hopefully this all helped, and hopefully you're actually, on your way to get Valhallan, right? Hopefully, you're getting up there and you're putting all this to practice. Like, make sure you're not like, going in and just autopiloting or any of that. And yeah, other than that, I will see you in the next one.